Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, wishing you a happy early start to this nice Friday morning here as we wrap up this week, a week that has been actually quite fun. A lot of opportunities as Bitcoin does have some volatile moves, both to the upside, both to the downside. Bitcoin crashing down last night, $1,000 after rallying up $3,000 in the last 24 to 48 hours. But that means the real question is there any news? Is there any news? Could you please tell me what the news is? What could have caused this massive move? It's like... Well, of course, sirs and zers, Bitcoin, all assets must either move straight in a line towards 100,000 or straight down in a line towards 10,000. And in both sides, equally as ridiculous being called for, at least in the more near term. Anyways, I wanted to follow up on the higher term time frame analysis, talk about what I think is probably the most clean and concise way to be looking at Bitcoin as what is most likely to do within the next couple weeks, and then thread it back into the lower term timeframes, following up on yesterday's short term time frame analysis. So let's jump into it right here, wasting no more time, and start off with the 5-day Gaussian channel. So the 5-day Gaussian channel has provided a nice edge for Bitcoin over the full history of it. Basically, anytime that has turned red and Bitcoin's traded below it and then crawled back into it, as you can see, like this would be a pretty damn good example right here. Turned red, boom, gets kicked out, crawls back in. Bitcoin has gotten a free ride to the median band. And that's the real question of what happens right there. If we're going to see a rejection, very likely happens from exactly that region. As you can see right here, or a little bit less so in this case, definitely you can see over here in 2014 and 2015, and definitely over here again in 2011 and 2012. So in this case, you can see that Bitcoin's found a nice little pullback, if you will, coming off the test of that region. So the real question is right now, are we going to come back down and test the bottom side of it? Or is Bitcoin going to hang around here until the end of the weekend, which this closes in about 2 days, and then close above the median band, of which every time that we've seen that happen, we've seen Bitcoin at least test the top side of the red area. And in many cases, in fact, 3 out of the 4 historical cases of this, it's gotten it's actually just busted right on through and busted all the way to new all-time highs in each and every case, except for one. The one would be 14 and 15 over, or 2014, 2015 over here. But again, you know, that major region is coming in around 24,350. So keep that number in the back of your mind's eye. It's not relevant necessarily for today, but on Sunday, Sunday, alongside the weekly closure, if Bitcoin closes above that region, which is, again, 24,350 on the 5-day time frame, then I'd very, very likely look for the next leg up to emerge from that, probably within the following few weeks. There's not really like a timing component of this. In some cases, you know, very quickly. In some cases, you know, crawls its way over there, like you see over here in 2011. But ultimately, that would be where I'd be looking for before the next sort of higher term time frame pullback, if you will. And again, that would be an area of interest in the shallow $28,000 territory. Anyways, moving on now, I wanted to follow up on the short term time frame analysis from yesterday. We were looking at the 4-hour range highs on the HPDR indicator as likely a impetus for a pullback if Bitcoin were to close back down below the momentum pivots. The momentum pivots upon the time of that recording on the lower term time frames were in the mid 24s. Obviously, Bitcoin closed below there on the lower term time frames is 4 hour, but on the hourly, obviously that happened midday. And you got a nice move back down to the actual average of historical returns right here on the 4 hour time frame. So far so good as far as that goes. You've obviously like a $3,000 move to the upside, probably going to get a bit of a pullback. But here's the thing. In the short-term timeframes, I would expect a greater pullback. I would expect a greater pullback if big if right here, if you do see it close below the average, which is 23,400, especially on a 4-hour time frame closing basis. If you're using an hourly, maybe 23,350, although higher term time frame is always going to hold precedence here. If that happens, I'd be looking for Bitcoin at minimum to come back down somewhere around 22.8, and then I want to come back to it after that. Still long term, however, I don't really have any humongous concern. Like the daily is still in an uptrend as long as Bitcoin's above, the last higher low on a daily closing basis, which is about 21.7 or so. This is only really relevant to the lower term timeframes. However, there is a nice setup emerging here on the hourly timeframe with the HPDR indicator, which if we can load it, because man, oh man, this one's taking a while. Then we can actually see something that I think is quite interesting right here, and we'll actually follow through with it on another chart as well, or another couple charts, if you will. Silence. Hey, come on, Trading View, for the love of God. There we go. Okay, so you can see that after Bitcoin was rejected over here, did come all the way down to a really critical level, actually, a level that you don't really see all that much, even on an hourly time frame, which is the 95 of historical returns range low. And there is a setup emerging here as we're starting to see volatility contract as of, let me plot it in here. As of, let's see, right around here. Let me just double check. Yeah, that's when we do see the moving average actually starting to turn down. So in this case, and let me get rid of this. This was relevant for yesterday, not for today. But in this case, we can now go and reference these statistics over here, which typically does produce a bit of a mean reversion setup. So we see volatility contraction, and we see, Bitcoin at like an outlier as far as historical returns goes. And on the hourly time frame, with this particular setup, with 50 of the past iterations, we've seen the upside setup emerge about 36 out of 50 times. So that'd give it a 72% strike rate. As always, 72%, not the same thing as 100%. If you don't understand statistics and probabilities, seriously, just leave this fucking channel because your comments drive me absolutely insane. Sorry. I don't mean to be that harsh, but seriously, like, fucking learn, or go away. Learn or don't, or don't. Anyways, yeah. So a higher probability of a bounce from this region than not. With that in mind, the average return has been about a 20% move to the upside. Again, first standard deviation relevant range right here. And in the case of a failure, which we'll go over failure conditions, I think we did. If we haven't, we'll go over it again. Then we'd actually be expecting about almost the same move to the downside. So in this case, it's a higher probability for an upside move first. But if Bitcoin closes below basically like, what's this wick low right here? Like 23,350, something like that. Whatever the low of this hourly is right here, then yeah, I'd be looking for that next move to the downside, into the 22s, into the upper 22s. But for right now, what does 2% or 220 look like to the upside? Well, that would put Bitcoin at 24,300. Well, that's really fucking important because, well, that's exactly where the 5-day median band is on the Gaussian channel. Now, of course, this would be in the kind of the relative short term. In fact, on average, in the case of the winning setups, it takes about 10 hours. So that would put us like around US Open. In the losing case, on average, almost double that at 17 hours. But basically, that would give Bitcoin a chance to close above there by Sunday, I suppose. And if that does happen, I would remain with general upside continuation into the end of February, maybe March, whatever it is. And if it doesn't happen, then I'd be looking for Bitcoin to play into the lower blocks that we saw in the past week or two. Anyways, or let's actually also see what does 2% look like to the downside. Sorry, let me just take it from the low. There we go. Yeah, upper 22s. Personally speaking, I do think that we'd see a little bit lower than that. I think we'd see like 22.7-ish, 22.8 region. Something like that would kind of make sense. But for right now, short term, does Bitcoin have a higher probability of bounce? Probably yes. I think that also does correlate with a CME gapola play over here, very, very close at least. Yeah, from yesterday's price action at about 24,450 on against CME. Do keep in mind that there's about $100 premium over spot price action. So yeah, that would be 23.3 for a spot basically. Or at least most likely. Anyways, as far as the lower term timeframes go, hourly stochastic momentum will actually turn up with a closure above 23,800, which right now it's trading below. So, still pressure to the downside in the short term. 4-hour time frame is going to be nosediving here as long as Bitcoin's below 24,950. Again, Bitcoin trading about $200 below there. So again, actually pressured down as far as that is concerned. 6-hour time frame freshly down as well, below $25,000. Again, that would be a case against a short-term bounce. 12-hour time frame will actually turn down if Bitcoin closes here or lower below 20. No, that's incorrect. It'll turn down below 22,750. So maybe not on this particular move, or at least just yet. In the daily, we'll actually continue with its upside momentum as long as Bitcoin's above 21,750. So you can kind of see some bifurcation in the lower term timeframes. As that goes on, and going back into it over here, or sorry, let me actually go back on over here. And no, actually that was it. That was all I wanted to say about that. I'm just losing my train of thought as Elsa just absolutely fucking dies in the background. But don't worry about her. She's fine. She's all good. Is there one last thing that I want to be showing over here? Let me see how long this video's been. 10 minutes in. Another thing that does suggest that Bitcoin's a little more likely to bounce here is this 30-minute setup. I'll just briefly go over this. Again, it's another Joule-related setup. Same thing as yesterday, just different time frame. Joule light going below the 35 read right here, turning white. Does have a higher probability of a short-term upside move than not. In this case, we can go show the strategy tester. Let me see if you actually can't see it. So there we go. Again, this is simulated with 300,000 in position size, so this is like not for one contract, obviously, but it is simulated over the last 2 years. So a good amount of history in here, 154 trades, almost 73% profitable with the one spot 5 profits factor. And you can actually see that recently it hasn't done all that well, despite Bitcoin's upside moves. But even in the bear market and then the heart of the last bull market did really well. Anyways, my point is that this would also suggest that Bitcoin has a higher probability of an upside move from here than not in the short term. But again, nothing really matters until we get that 5-day closure, personally speaking, or if the daily, let's say the daily pops back up and closes above 24, 24.5 or 24.4. Yeah, if you see something like that, that would also do it for me, with looking at this as the next higher low and likely continuation in the short term rather than the long term. But ultimately, that's going to do it for today. Want to once again shield the old Bybit there. They got 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders for 30 days from sign up. As always, read the fine print on their stuff because, well, it might be relevant to you, might not be relevant to you. I don't know. And yeah, that's a good place for me to shut it off. I'm going to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.